This is Thank You Mama, weekly lessons from mothers all around the world. Hello and welcome to Thank You Mama. My name is Anna Tyler and I have a very dear and special guest to me today. My guest is Sybil, and Mo and I connected on a podcasting conference, didn't we, Mo? And you invited me to be a guest on your podcast, and you deeply, deeply touched me. It's very seldom that the interviewer touches the interviewee, but you were so beautifully prepared and you had the most amazing questions. And just talking to you for your podcast, I came out feeling inspired and fulfilled and happy. Thank you for that. And I'm so happy to have you as my guest on my podcast today.
Thank you so much, Anna. It's really an honor to be on your podcast. I have listened to a couple of your episodes, and so I'm super, honored that, I get to be on this show as well to share my mom's story. Thank you for all you do.
So you come originally from Nigeria and you moved to United States in your 20s to study here. You have a PhD in pharmaceutical sciences and you do research on prostate cancer. And you and I had this long conversation about cancer because of all the cancer histories in my family. And you have a podcast which is called Sybil Podcast about culture and cultural nomads. And it's designed for Blacks and Asians and those who love them. Oh, they're so. Tell me about it all. Tell me about your PhD and tell me about your research. I'm very excited. I just saw that you had a very important paper published. Congratulations to that. And then let's talk about the podcast.
All right. So thank you for having me once again. My full legal name is Motolani Ogunsanya, which is a Nigerian name. I am from the Yoruba tribe. It's a tribe and a language and a culture that I imbibe as a Nigerian. My brand name is Sybil. Sybil is, a spiritual name for me. And as a creative, I really embody that. And so, yes, I am from Nigeria, proudly so. Moved to the U.S. about 10 years ago to advance my degree. I have a pharmacy background, worked with Chevron for a while, and also worked with Harvard School of Public Health in one of their satellite clinics in Nigeria as a HIV consultant pharmacist. And I realized that I was so pompous as a pharmacist and I needed to understand more about the social determinants of medication adherence, especially in patients that were low income. Mm-hmm. And so that drive to better myself, made me come to grad school. So I went to University of Texas, Hookham Hunt, got my master's degree there, and then actually came from my PhD and then got my master's along the way. And graduated in 2017 with a PhD in health economics and outcomes research. But the bigger term for that would be pharmaceutical sciences. And shortly after then, I was lucky, blessed, I call it, to land my job at the University of Oklahoma, where I'm currently on the tenure track as an assistant professor of pharmacy, where I teach professional and graduate pharmacy students, and I conduct research on cancer and lupus outcomes. And at night, I work on my podcast show, the Sybil podcast, like you've, accurately described some moments ago.
Let's talk about Korean, because that's such a big part of who you are. How did that happen? How did a person from Nigeria who came to the U.S. to study suddenly become adopted Korean?
Oh my gosh, we don't have all the time, but let me try and keep it quick. I have always been a child who loved, exploring cultures. So that aspect of that concept of cultural curiosity, that was really me as a child, because I loved reading encyclopedias and a lot of the shows that I watched then growing up, like Children of the World and Teen Camp's Children of the World in Nigeria. For any Nigerian listening to this growing up in the 80s, they will know that show. These kids would travel to other parts of the world and explore culture. And I used to pray and wish that, my parents could afford to send me there. Mm-hmm. But of course, my parents being early starters, they just had enough to put food on the table and send us to good schools. But I live vicariously through those children. So I thought to myself, you know what? If I can't travel, I might as well just read. So I read vicariously as a child, like vivaciously as a child. I just carved down books. And I would go during break time to the principal's office or headmistress office then. And because I went to a very good primary school, it was an international school, sit down and read all the books that I wanted to read. And because I was also super smart, I would trade with my friends. Like, I'll do your assignments for you. Just give me your books. And they'll, a lot of these kids would travel abroad. They'll bring their books for me. And so, yeah, I studied a lot. So with the book, I could transform and, travel places without having to like pay for a flight ticket. And so coming to the US was really like Christmas came, every day for me because all these cultures that I had, only known about through books, I could like have experiential knowledge of them. And being in grad school where it was like a bubble, and I went to Texas, University of Texas, which is quite diverse, even though Austin as a whole is not super diverse, but it's a very good school. So you had, the best people nations sending their best, to colleges like that. And so having to interact with people, I just loved it. It felt like, finding people that spoke a language of belonging that I wanted to, connect with. And I do say that sometimes Americans can be friendly, but they don't necessarily make good friends. But in international people, I found like camaraderie. I found that sense of connection. And so Korean was just, a culture that I think and I don't want to sound corny saying this, I think it's a deeply spiritual connection. Even my friends tell me that, even though I don't believe in, reincarnation, like, I think you're Korean, like there has to be some part. I'm like, yeah, look at me, I'm as black as, because think about it. While I was in school, because the way my country is located, it's situated, we're surrounded by so many French-speaking countries. And I learned French. I've learned French more years now than I've learned Korean. My French, my vocabulary in French, I've even lost a lot of them. I wasn't really picked by the, French culture. I didn't like their food. I mean, I do acknowledge the big gains they've made in culinary and all that, but French people don't excite me as much as Korean. I hear Korean, almost like every DNA in my body just, perks up. And so I give credit to my classmate then in grad school. We took stat classes together, and I told her, hey, can I borrow your notes to like fill in some of the parts that I missed? And I saw she had doodled on the top right corner of her notebook. And I'm like, what is that? She's like, oh, that's my language. I'm like, it looks weird. It was like circles and, rods. And I didn't think much about that until fast forward 3 years down the line, we ended up being the 2 people in the whole of the country who got an internship in a biotech firm, which was a very big deal. And it was in Boston. It cost a lot of money to live in Boston as, grad students. So we decided to stay together and save money. And so we were roommates, and every day we'd go to work and come back home. She had this, rice cooker who said hello in Korean and had hot sticky rice ready all the time. And, I love to eat good food, as you can tell. And so I started asking her, like, you guys eat rice every day? She's like, pretty much, yeah, because just the thing about Korea is that they don't differentiate between breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Rice can be eaten any time of the day. Kimchi can be eaten any of the day. Now they have like food for like summer, or, if you just had a baby, if you're sick, for winter, they have foods like that. But as far as breakfast food, they didn't have that. So I was like, well, how do you guys stay so skinny? And they started telling me how they flip the pyramid around. Unlike in my country where we eat, rice by the basins, in Korea they eat them as sides. So it's a part of the meal. It's not the main meal. And they garnish their food with vegetables and meat, plenty of meat. And I'm like, oh my God, I have found my people. I can eat rice every day without having to say Hail Mary. And then the more she talked about her mom, actually, and I know this might be interesting to you, the more I realized that, oh my gosh, your mom is as neurotic as mine. Like, take the issue of the Danish cookies, tins, and putting like needles and thread. I thought it was only a Nigerian mom thing, yeah. But mom did that. So I'm like,
her
wait,
mom,
what?
but we talked about this. The Korean mom did this, and the Nigerian mom, and the Croatian mom. So we all had moms.
Mom, yeah. And I'm like, what? And then we started laughing at things her mom would do, and then we laughed. I was like, oh my gosh, like looking at us phenotypically, you couldn't even tell that we had so many things, like threads running through us. So all of my book knowledge, I started testing them out. Like at the end of the day, really, we want to connect. We want to be with people who speak not necessarily their language, but heart languages. And, I started learning more about the culture through her, but I didn't really think much about learning the language. As a matter of fact, I wasn't really interested. But after grad school, I needed to change my visa to like a working visa. I was processing that. It took about 2 months. And, an opportunity came for me to learn Korean, and I started learning it, and I've loved it. I picked it up so fast. it's such a shame to, the French, learning part
Mm-hmm.
of me, because it felt like a betrayal. I really studied hard at French, but with Korean, it didn't feel like a lot of efforts. As a matter of fact, whenever I was stressed, I studied Korean, and it's been 4 years, and I study Korean every day. Not because
Mm-hmm.
I have to, because I want to. I
Yeah, it's
love it,
fun.
and I've gotten, a lot better at it. So that's it. That's about it.
Cool. Well,
Thank you.
let's talk about Mum Bukky. Now we know about the Danish cookies tin. We already know one secret. Tell me about her.
My mom is, I feel like talking about her, it feels kind of heavy in a way, not because it's a sad story, but because she's had a huge impact on my life. And I feel like I haven't been able to convey with words just how she means to me. And I guess the physical separation, because she's in Nigeria right now, makes it very hard to like really, because you don't see her every day, right?
Yes, yes.
So she lost her dad at a very young age, and she grew up with sisters, and so that shaped her life as well. She was one of the youngest kids,
Mm-hmm.
and she was also one of the first people in her school, in her family, to go to like college, like a full college.
Mm.
And along the way, and she was super smart. You know how parents always tell you, well, I was always the first in my class growing up. My mom was really smart, because I've met a lot of her classmates who still sing of her praises. And being a female, then she also studied civil engineering, which wasn't a common profession for a lot of females at her time. Yeah, so she studied civil engineering, and she was really good at her job, because I used to remember going to visit her on sites and going to her office. She worked for an international firm there, a constructing firm.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, another thing that happened, significant life events, was my mom she grew up in the well, I want to call her like the villages, right? But some missionaries came and they helped her get to school, and she studied real hard. And then she went to the big city for like I want to call it like a paramilitary service, what they call NYSC then. I don't know if you heard about that. It's almost like a paramilitary exercise that
Mm-hmm.
people have to go through. So, and then she walked into a bank, I think the very first week of her, posting in Lagos. And my dad saw her and said, "I'm going to marry you." Well,
Oh, he was in the bank. Was
yeah,
he working in the bank?
he was stuck in the bank there. He would later make his way up from like, a manager and advance through the ranks before he
Uh-huh.
finally retired. And well, guess what happened, Anna? She was so naive and, sheltered. And well, they ended up, my dad had a party and he invited her. And well, let's just say I was formed that night. And my mom being sheltered and coming from a very conservative household, it really caused a lot of trouble. And
Oh,
anyways,
wow.
life was interrupted. And so they had me. And
Mm-hmm.
that was just the beginning of it all.
Did they stay married? Did they have more kids?
Yeah, they did stay married, and I want to commend my parents for doing that, because it would have been easier if they had gotten rid of the pregnancy. And I say that respectfully, despite, because I always want to speak for life, not in all situations, I understand, but for them to have been brave enough to keep that
Mm-hmm.
pregnancy, it was very stressful. And I think that the stress is still an ongoing issue, because I probably felt it in utero. And I
Mm-hmm.
think it really affected her, because she didn't even know she was pregnant. It was a neighbor that saw her working in her sister's house that came to tell her sister, "Why would you tell your younger sister to do this and that? Can't you tell she's with child?" And the sister was like, "What?"
Mm.
And so my mom didn't even know she was pregnant. So they had to like form their family overnight. My dad
Mm-hmm.
stepped up the plate. As you can imagine, their life changed overnight.
Yeah.
The dreams they had to like cut it, really abrupted. And they will later go on to have like two more kids. So I have two brothers. The second one I'm 3 years older than, and then the last one I'm, 6 years older than. So there's quite a huge gap. Actually, 9 years older than him. So
Mhm.
that's a huge gap.
That's a big
So,
gap, yeah.
yeah.
Is she still working or is she retired?
She's still working. My mom is, I don't think even when she's retired, she still wants to keep working. And I think that's the aspect of her that I get, and not being able to rest. Because I
Mm-hmm.
always think about bringing her here and just having her just stay here. But I'm afraid that she might just die quickly, because She comes here and you can tell there's not much for her to do. She always complains, you guys don't see your neighbors. You don't talk to people around you. So yeah, she has a farm now. She doesn't do engineering
Mm-hmm.
work anymore. She has a farm where she does like pigs, she rears pigs, does coal exporting and all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Oh, let's learn from her. I can't wait to hear her lessons.
So, my mom, given what happened to her growing up, and because she was also very introversive, she didn't say a lot, but you could tell that she had the strength. But I think, having to have me so early and out of wedlock, they would later go on to get married, but for all intents and purposes, I was born out of wedlock.
How old was she?
She was 21.
Oh, 21. Okay. Okay.
She wasn't like super young,
Yeah,
but
it was,
it
yeah.
wasn't planned. It
Mm-hmm.
wasn't planned.
Yeah, yeah.
She was actually coming off a school program then. And because right now, at this age, my mom she was already done with her kids because I'm going to be 35 this year. And meanwhile, I'm still trying to think about the colors I'm going to get for my next, braces appointment. Like totally different worries, But,
You have time. I had CAD 40 and it worked great.
Thank you. Thank you. My mom, I think that whole experience of, motherhood being, something that she had to get into without getting all the preparation, plus the stigma that came with that, I think it really made her close, up inside more, right?
Mm-hmm.
And for
Mm-hmm.
someone that was already introverted, it made for a very super introverted life. So I could see that. I could see that struggle, but she was also very strong in that regard. My mom is someone that she's accomplished a whole lot, and everywhere we go, people always have good things to say about her.
Mm-hmm.
So I think because of that experience, growing up, I knew I had to fight for the underdogs. Because I would hear some people say things about my mom, maybe just in a way that wasn't quite, uplifting. And she might be within hearing shots of that, but she won't like, retort at them or, say anything. But even when we're back home and in the privacy of our homes, I have never heard her say anything bad about anybody.
Mm-hmm.
Even when, people have taken her for granted and they've hurt her deeply, she will still not have a bad word to say about
Oh,
them.
wow.
And in that regard, I think she's far more gracious than I am because I might still have words for them because I'm quite vocal and but I learned not to gossiping. I learned how gossip was really bad quickly from my mom and how it can destroy people. So I always tell my friends, don't tell me bad things about your other friends. The same way I'm not going to tell,
Mm-hmm.
other people bad things about you if you're not there. So I learned quickly to be careful about my words and to always fight for the underdogs. And so my quest for attaining power and relevance is really to speak up for people that are not able to speak up for themselves. And that is something I learned from my mom. So through my writing, through my podcast, I always want to speak up for people that felt like they've been, shut down by the society. And so I explore topics, taboo topics, because I feel like there's nothing we can really talk about if you have like an open conversation and we're very honest about what roles we might have played and others have played in us. And that's something I credit my mom for. She was always gracious, never had a bad thing to say about anybody, even when those words were needed.
Another lesson?
I would say that to be patient, like being patient. My mom, she just did the strength she had. I really don't know how to really explain it. Even because I feel like I'm quite a naturally anxious person. She would say, be patient. Everything will fall into place. And she always had these encouraging words to like give you. And so I even seen her life grow because I bet to say that a lot of people around her didn't think that she was gonna, make it. As a matter of fact, she had to pause the end, till end of her schooling. She had to pause it when she had me, and they were so sure she was not gonna go back to school to finish it. Well, guess what? She finished. She went back to school. The day she had me was when the letter of her, graduation came. So it was like two blessings in one for her.
Wow.
So the patience, my mom is a very patient person. Even my friends, when you talk to her, when you see her, she carries that around. I'm not like that, I have a lot. I'm just like, it's still a fruit of spirit I'm trying to cultivate in me. But my mom is very patient. And the lesson I learned from her will be when in position to help people. My mom took in a lot of people that were not biologically related to us. I have many uncles and aunties and brothers and sisters, outside all over, my country and even outside of my country, because my mom took in people I remember some people that would come to Lagos then. Lagos used to be the capital and it was super expensive and it's still super expensive to live in Lagos.
Mm-hmm.
Like core members, people that came from for like industrial postings, she'll have them stay with us. We didn't have a fancy house. We barely even, we barely even had enough to like, live by. My mom would always take people in that needed help. I remember when she had gone for a posting in the rural area, she met a pastor's kid and she kind of adopted him as a son, and now he's in South Africa as a doctor. As a matter of fact, my mom went on to adopt, even though in my country, adoptions are not formal, but for all intents and purposes, she's serving a motherly role towards, my younger sister. She's not biologically related to me, but everyone in where we live, they know her more as my mom's daughter than they know me as my mom's daughter. So that's the person my mom is. So what I do right now, my role as someone that lives in Oklahoma, I'm very involved in international student organizations. I am part of a program here called CRISP, the Community Response to International Students, program. And I adopt international students every semester. We invite them home, we cook for them, we take them everywhere. So that's one of the things I learned from my mom, cooking for people and just being a good host. And whatever you have, don't think of it like it's all yours. God has given it to you to bless others with. That's something I learned from my mom. I think another lesson, what about it, is to pray. My mom is a prayer warrior. Like, I don't think you've ever met a Nigerian mom that doesn't pray. I think inherently they worry a lot and that turns into prayer. So we can also talk about the good and bad side. But in all things, I still think prayers are good. My mom is a prayer. She's a prayer warrior. She'll wake up every day at 2 a.m. to pray for everybody.
Oh, in the middle of the night?
In the middle of the night. It's still a habit she's cultivated. Meanwhile, here I am just, dozing off and just waking up at, 8 o'clock if I can make it on a good morning.
So she prays at 2 and then goes back to bed?
Goes back to bed, yeah. She prays for like an hour every day or two. Every day too. She still does it. Even when she's here, she still does it. And you can imagine the time difference. She still does it. She wakes up every day. She's a prayer warrior. And a lot can be said about that. But, I think it's, amazeballs that she does that.
And pardon my ignorance, but what religion would that be? Because there are different religions. Yeah.
Yeah, the very good point. So she's Christian and she's Pentecostal, and so she prays and reads the Bible. And my mom is someone that, she has a Bible verse for everything you're going through. When she comes here and we go for like small groups, like in church, my friends always remember, oh my gosh, she won't remember. She will say, go to your Bible, and she will mention very, verses that I don't even remember. My mom knows everything. Like she knows her Bible in and out, and she always has like a verse to share with you whenever you need something. I said, go, it's in your Bible, because she believes everything is in the Bible. So that's she has. I know I'm kind of lazy in that area. I'm still trying to develop mine. But I was under her corporate prayer, for a while before I started to find my own faith and what works for me. But yes, I really, really appreciate that strength she has.
So you do pray? Yeah. So
I pray, but nowhere near.
Not at 2 a.m. for an hour.
And I think, no, definitely not at 2 a.m. because I feel like God understands. And I feel like in Nigeria, you have to pray more because there's so many things that are not working in your favor. There's no light. I mean, that you have like power insecurities. There's so many things you have to pray for in Nigeria. Whereas if you live in a developed country like the US, a lot of the hassles have been taken away. So what you really have to pray for now is, God, can I get that promotion? Can I get that, that kind of thing. So it's different circumstances, which I think is just moving with the times. But I've tried to cultivate a healthy prayer life, and being married as well, I know the place of praying for my spouse and my family and all that. So yes, I learned that from her.
Do we have more lessons from her?
I do. And that's being open-minded, because I felt like a lot of people judge my mom a lot. And so I've learned not to like take people's words. Like, how you say something about somebody, and that can become your running narrative about that person without exploring them. And I found that in life, whenever you hear things about people, don't hold that as the final word. Get to know them yourself if you can. Because more often than not, it's not always the fact. So I've learned that from my mom, because I don't think anyone could even expect that she would make it in life and how far she's gone. And I know that growing up, being the first child as well and being a female, it was a thing of honor for me to, live up to my dreams and fulfill that to the very best. Not because she demanded that of me, no. I wore it as a thing of pride to make sure that my mom's story is never forgotten through her life. Yes, her life was derailed by having me, but I don't feel pressured at all to be the best in everything I can do. Because I take it, that God helping me, I want to keep that legacy going. Because I come from a very, very, supportive background, my mom and my dad inclusive. And so growing up, since you're talking about moms, growing up, my mom always told me there was nothing I couldn't do. So you can tell me otherwise, but my family unit was so strong that bullies really didn't have a lot of effect on me. In fact, I had a mouth. The mouth on me got me into trouble a lot. But I give my mom that because she pumped me up a lot. You wouldn't hear her raise her voice. You wouldn't hear her speak so loud. She wouldn't come into a room and announce herself. I got all of that through her. So I always see like there has to be a pendulum that will swing. When you come from a particular life, like a household, you tend to want to go the opposite direction. So the first I'm going in the opposite direction, not because it's an opposite contradictory direction. No, it's because of the strength that my mom has given me. So I did things that, ordinary females wouldn't do.
Yeah.
And she always let me know that, you can do it. You can do it. You want to do that, you can do it. And as you can imagine, coming from a place where it was rural and, being first starters and also starting their family so abrupted, they didn't have a lot of intergenerational wealth to fall back on. So everything they made, they put it into our education. My parents didn't go for lavish parties. They didn't try to be what they could be. They put everything in our education. So I had a lot of housing insecurity growing up. But because of my parents' sacrifice, I'm able to be here today to, get a PhD, speak good English, travel the world and do all of that. So I owe it to them to keep that legacy going. And I'm so thankful that they had the insight to, give us that education. So that's one of the things that my mom, education and also being open-minded. Don't judge people too quickly. Get to know them.
Whoa, we have so many lessons. Do we have more? Should we?
There's one more on humility.
Okay, one more.
Now my mom is very humble. And I don't say that because, how people say I'm a humble person. My mom is very, very humble. She's very, very humble. I do have a lot to learn in that area because I feel like when things come at you naturally, you get things done naturally. You have to be very intentional about being humble. And I know that I might have some excesses that need to be curbed and it's still a work in progress. But from my mom, I've learned humility. No matter how far you go in life, be humble. Treat everybody you need to respect, regardless of whether they're under you or above you. In fact, learning Korean, one of the things that I think has helped me is because they have different level of honorifics as far as speech. And everybody I meet, I always use the formal tone of speech, even people that are younger than me. And they go, please, don't speak, too formal.
Yeah.
I'm like, let me keep this going. It helps me to stay grounded as a, foreigner learning your language. So, and I take that with it's sometimes very hard for me to stay humble, but I remember my mom's story to be a great injustice, if I'm not able to remember just, how her story has helped shape me. So when I think about her life, I think about that. Another thing I also learned is giving. My mom is a giver. Like I said, she gives a lot. She gives a lot. And I want to say that I think in that regard, I'm also doing a good job. I could, definitely do it better. I guess one of the things, I think we talked about this before we started tipping, living in a country here where almost like everybody wants to keep acquiring stuff, acquisition.
Yes.
It feeds your soul. So I'm thankful for the heritage that I come from. I also coming from Nigeria. I want to give back more. And, so it's almost like a counterculture here to want to always give back without having the fanfare. But, looking at my mom and setting her as an example, I definitely learned to be a good giver, not just someone to give and then you want to be given credit for. Just do things without, I guess, thanks for it without any expectation of the fanfare and the, thank you note. So I do a lot of things like that where I just give stuff and I say, don't tell them it's from me, things like that. I learned that from my mom. Yeah.
Let's jump into something, or is there anything she was not able to teach you?
You know what? I know this question was coming and I thought to myself so let me just put this little bit of a disclaimer is that I'm very thankful for my parents and my mom especially for all the things they've taught me. And I believe that parenting is in such a way that whatever you have learned from your parents is the best it could give you. and your job is to do better, right? And so I'm not gonna say, oh, my parents were bad in this area.
No.
But of course, what they couldn't teach me, like I said, my family structure was different. They had to form their unity like overnight. So two things I thought about was, one, I want to say sex, my sexuality. Oh my gosh. My mom, I guess because of the shame that came with that and maybe
Yeah.
being happy, conservative as well. The sex talk was horrid. It was a torture for her. She couldn't even look me in the eye. I had to hold her hand and tell her, Mom, it's okay. I know all these things already. And that was the end of our sex talk. And now that I'm older, I realized that it shouldn't be one and done. It's something that you should keep telling your kids over and over again. Every year they advance in life,
Yes.
the talk should have advancing left. Exactly. My mom just thought, telling me that at whatever, I think I was probably 6 or 5 or whatever, that was the end of it. So I wish I had just been more open about it, because it was older that I got. The older, I knew there's something different about my family. We didn't have like family pictures. There was no wedding pictures. We didn't celebrate wedding anniversaries. So as a child, you kind of pick up the cues. So I know that probably bothered her a lot. And the older I got, the more I realized that, okay, if I did like the math, their wedding date, and then, because I was 8 when he got married, like, officially, maybe younger than that, maybe 6, like I don't remember when, but I was of age when he got married. I know what was going on because I was on the bridal team and all that. So I did the math real quick from then on. Oh, okay, this is the official marriage now. They've just cohabiting. So I guess all of that made it very, complex for my mom, plus being introverted as well.
Yeah.
So I wish I had talked to me about sex, as a Christian, and erroneously so. Now that I'm older, I realize that the church doesn't do a lot in preparing me for marriage.
It doesn't.
They make sex a dirty thing, and you're supposed to like unleash the tiger in you when you get married. Meanwhile, you've been told, it's dirty, but now you're in marriage. Oh, it's supposed to be freaky, but hold on, wait, conflicting messages. So I wish I had taught me all of that, but I knew at a very young age that I didn't want to have kids, that quickly out of wedlock and all that. And I think another lesson I learned from her that maybe she didn't teach me, but it was implied, was there's nothing like the love of a child for a child, and there's nothing also like the work of a child. It's a lot of work to make motherhood happen. And I think a lot of the fears because I had to go to therapy, and I realized that, okay, I had some trauma with, being a mom. I mean, perhaps trauma was caused by, a lot of struggles my husband and I had, with having kids, or it was a trauma that caused the things to happen. And so I realized that perhaps a lot of her story was still left in me, and I didn't need to mix it with my story, that it happened like that for them doesn't necessarily mean what's going to happen like that for me. And I think the last bit of it was maybe finances. My mom wasn't really, I don't think she's, she did a good job in that regard. So my dad works in a bank, but since this is a show about moms, I wish my mom had taught me a lot more about, savings, bonds and all that, because I interacted more with her than my dad growing up, so those were those areas that I thought about.
Oh, Mo, we had so many lessons. Let's very quickly recap, and they are so important. You started with fight for underdogs, never saying a bad word about anyone, never gossiping, and speaking for people who can't speak for themselves. I will pack all of that into one lesson. Then to be patient, and this is something my mom was trying to teach me as well. I think it's so important. Your mom said, be patient, everything will fall into place. And it's true. When you're young, you so want to hurry things and don't realize there's time and place for everything. Then when in position to help people, help them. To be a good host and cook for your guests. The power of prayer. I can't believe still she gets up at 2 and prays for an hour. Being open-minded and not judging people too quickly. That you can do everything you set your mind to. The importance of education. Humility. And then something you wish she had taught you was about sex. About finances. And then a very, very, very important lesson is that Your mom's story doesn't have to be your own story, that we should not identify ourselves too much with our mom's stories, which is very interesting now that we're talking for a Thank You Mama podcast. Mo, thank you so much for being my guest. I'm so excited. We were trying to find the right time for both you and me for months at this stage, and I'm so happy we did it. These are some awesome lessons.
Thank you so much for having me, and I really do appreciate, talking about my mom today.
Thank you. If you enjoy Thank You Mama and want to help it grow, please take the 2 seconds to leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. It really helps. If you'd like to get in touch, you can send me a mail at info@thankyouMama.net. You can also find me on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter under Anna Tider, that's Tajder. This was Thank You Mama. Come back next week, subscribe, and tell your friends.